And tonight on the Daily Wrap, has Donald Trump permanently destroyed any goodwill with Mexico for the next 200 years? What did he say this time? A full fact check of the Donald straight ahead. Obamacare in serious jeopardy of being ruled unconstitutional. But does the GOP have an alternative? And Mary Catherine Ham and Guy Benson join us to tell us why free speech is under attack and what we can do to protect it. Fun interview there. You might want to stick around. We got potluck and yay and nay as well. Well, no potluck tonight. This is the Daily Wrap, live from the Big Apple. And welcome to the Wrap, everybody. Joining me, as he always does, Rick Unger in the house.
Good to be here, as always.
Absolutely. And we also have America's pundit and Philly attorney. She is Heather Hansen joining us, and I can't tell if it's red, can't tell it, pink kind of outfit.
But look at those teeth.
It is pink.
They are so white.
Yeah, you got like Tiger Woods white teeth.
Yeah.
They're tremendous. Anyway, finally, host of the Wilco Majority on Sirius XM, Andrew Wilco joins us for the first time.
This is awesome. First time around to be here.
Wow. See, no one ever reacts like that. We never get that from Bruce.
I know Rick does a little part-time work where I work.
Yes, we've heard that. Okay, let's get right to the Daily Download. And 2016, Republican hopeful Donald Trump is taking his show on the road to New Hampshire. A day after his much talked about campaign announcement, everyone can't stop talking about, good and bad. In a speech full of bluster and boasts, the billionaire real estate developer played fast and loose with the facts.
And our real unemployment is anywhere from 18 to 20%. Don't believe the 5.6. Don't believe it. That's right. A lot of people up there can't get jobs. They can't get jobs because there are no jobs.
Well, there were a few things wrong with that sentence and other things as well. Right, Rick? Like this. Last quarter, our gross domestic product was below zero. It's never below zero, quote unquote, from Mr. Trump, you say.
Not true. In fact, we've had 42 quarters since 1946, I believe, where we have, in fact, had negative GDP.
Interesting.
So
perhaps,
we missed on that one.
Perhaps some hyperbole there.
Perhaps.
Yes. Every car, every truck, this is also a quote from Mr. Trump. Every car, every truck, and every part manufactured in this plant that comes across the border, we're going to charge you a 35% tax, this plant being Ford, I believe he was referencing. And that tax is going to be paid simultaneously with the transaction, and you say?
Again, problematic on two fronts. First of all, the president does not have the authority to levy such a tax. Congress does, and even if he could persuade Congress to do it, the NAFTA treaty strictly prohibits that sort of a tax.
Besides that, it's perfectly
otherwise it works fine.
Okay. Another quote from Mr. Trump. We get Bergdahl, we get a traitor, we get a no-good traitor. And they get 5 people that were wanted for years. And those people are now back on the battlefield trying to kill us. Is that true?
Except that they aren't. They may be someday. There's reason for concern, I would certainly acknowledge. But as we are sitting here, those people are still in Qatar, who are still monitoring them, and the travel restrictions that the State Department put on them are still in effect. Again, it's fair for him to worry about it, but he's not accurate when he says they're currently on the battlefield.
Okay, we have more. This from Mr. Trump. I have assets. Big accounting firm. One of the most highly respected. $9,240,000,000, you get it. And I have liabilities of about $500 million. That's long-term debt, very low interest rates. Well,
one of the most respected money writers in the country, who works at the Washington Post, he's won, something like 7 of the top awards, basically said, you're fired, Donald. That is the loosest interpretation of wealth. I can tell you the magazine that I write for, Forbes, which is known to have a fairly good sense of this, puts his net worth at about $4 billion. He was clearly exaggerating.
Only by double or so.
Not that $4 billion's anything to sneeze at, but
Well, Trump also took on Japan. Take a listen.
When did we beat Japan at anything? They send their cars over by the millions. And what do? When was the last time you saw a Chevrolet in Tokyo? It doesn't exist, folks. They beat us all the time.
Okay, but some folks in Japan were quick to send photos over social media showing, I knew this was going to happen, by the way, you guessed it, a Chevy and a GM dealership near Tokyo, Unger.
I was going to say, last time I saw a Chevy in Japan was about 20 minutes ago when I visited their website in Japan and saw photos of the GM dealerships selling them there. So, I don't know where he's coming up with this stuff.
Well, not hard to use the Google machine in this particular case. Okay, well, those are just a few examples of some of Trump's gross exaggerations. We're now joined by Newsmax TV host and former congressman from Arizona, J.D. Hayworth. How are you, sir? Good to see you. Can you hear me?
Joe, it's an honor to be with you. Thanks for the chance to appear.
All right. We may have a little bit of a delay, so work
fine.
with me at home. So what are you going to make of the Donald's? Obviously, there were going to be whoppers in this speech. He went completely off script. He tends to exaggerate. He's a salesman first. Is this something that will immediately make him totally uncredible, or does the American public like this kind of candor, even if it is grossly exaggerated in many cases, as Rick just pointed out?
Well, I think Donald, for a lot of people, Trump offers a real difference. And in this information age, there is going to be a situation where you can do immediate fact checking. But I also think that the media needs to be careful because it comes across to a lot of people as having a hostile intent toward what Trump might argue is a larger truth. I will tell you this, based on emails and phone calls and responses from people I know, Trump struck a chord yesterday, and it would be a mistake to underestimate him.
And apparently Rush Limbaugh does agree with you. The conservative talk show host warns voters we shouldn't underestimate him. Let's take a listen.
He said about Mexico, they're sending us their worst people. They're sending us criminals. They're sending us the poor. They're just bad people. Some of them may be good people, but they're just bad people. And we don't need them. And it resonated. That's going to resonate. There's a whole bunch of people, just like Perot resonated.
Wow, J.D., the next Perot. Rick, do you agree that he is the next Ross Perot? Could get 19% of the vote like Perot did in 1996?
Well, for starters, he'd have to run as an independent if he wants to be the next Perot and be a spoiler in the election. I don't think that's what he has in mind. I think I take him at his word. He wants to be the Republican nominee. So that is not Perot-like, Rush.
Well, Donald Trump also said, quote, when Mexico sends its people, they are not sending their best. They are sending you. They are sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems to us. They're bringing drugs, and they're bringing crime, and they're bringing rapists. Sort of reminds me of a film.
Be ready to attack Rock Ridge at noon tomorrow. Here's your badge.
Badges? We don't need no stinking badges. Oh, no.
Next! Qualifications.
Stampeding cattle
That's not much of a crime.
through the Vatican.
Kinky.
Okay, so JD, I know you're still with us. Quick question, and this will be the final question. Does a Trump candidacy therefore bring down the rest of the GOP pack? In other words, if he embarrasses the party in any way, shape, or form, and that very well could happen, will that reflect poorly on the rest of the candidates there as well?
Let's be candid. One dynamic that always seems to be at work in coverage of conservative politicians, you find columnists and others who disagree with them that call everybody who's conservative an embarrassment. I think that Trump addresses some topics that, again, strike a note with the American public. And somebody mentioned Perot. Others have talked about George Wallace with a silver spoon in his mouth. But I've got to tell you in all candor, Trump is a guy who has the money to deliver a message. And it remains to be seen if the credibility problems you cited earlier will take him down. And for the rest of the field, look, this is going to be an incredible competition with a lot of different people coming at this from a lot of different angles, even though there are people who say the Republican Party is basically uniform. I think Trump brings a real populist tinge to this campaign, and it definitely is going to shake things up.
And certainly candor as well. J.D. Hayworth, host of Newsmax Prime. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. And more Newsmax TV coming right up. Stay right there. And welcome back to the show. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host Rick Unger, Heather Hansen, and Andrew Wilco. So the Supreme Court could rule any day now on the constitutionality of a key component of Obamacare. 7 million people, 7 million, could lose their health care subsidies if the court rules the law did not intend for the money to be used to buy insurance through the government's healthcare.gov website. Plaintiffs argue only those states that set up their own exchanges are eligible for those subsidies. But Republicans met behind closed doors today and plan to continue those subsidies for up to 2 years if the Supreme Court rules against the Obama administration. But they're also planning some big changes. On Sunday, House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Paul Ryan was dodgy when asked what Republicans intended to do.
But here's the question. Will you demand an end to the mandates, the employer mandates, the individual mandates, which Secretary Burwell said, in effect, would amount to repealing Obamacare, and that the president would veto?
Well, I'm not going to get into all of that right now because we want to see what the ruling is, but we want to give people freedom from Obamacare. We want to let people actually buy what they want to buy so that we can lower health care prices.
Okay, that went well. So we're joined now by Sally Pipe. She's the president of Pacific Research Institute. Sally is also a healthcare policy expert. According to Reuters, under the House Republican proposal, the subsidies would continue in a reordered marketplace without requirements for most people to carry insurance and most employers to offer it. Just want to note that. So, Sally, what do you make of this proposal, and is it dead on arrival if it makes it to the president's desk?
Right. Well, I mean, this just came out this afternoon on my computer, so it's new. You're right. I mean, Paul Ryan said on Sunday on Fox News, Sunday with Chris Wallace, that the Republicans were not going to release their actual replacement plan until after the court decides, which could be tomorrow, a week Monday, or the following Monday. So, the issue is about continuing the subsidies for those 6.4 million Americans who are in the 37 states that are getting subsidies because they're enrolled in healthcare.gov exchanges. And the law specifically says that the subsidies would only be available to those people on exchanges established by the state. And so that is the issue at hand. A number of senators, Senator Ron Johnson has been saying his bill would be to extend the subsidies until August or September of 2017. Other people are saying 6 months. Other people are saying till after the 2016 election. I really am very nervous about continuing the subsidies. If the court in fact rules that the subsidies are illegal, I think, nothing endures like the temporary. And, if we start pushing that out and pushing it out, before you know it, the subsidies will be all right, and we will have, we will have full-scale Obamacare. So the issue that came out today is important. They're saying that states would be able to accept the block grant from the feds. They would be able to set up their own exchanges. They would get rid of the employer and the individual mandates. People could purchase HSAs. They could get tax credits from the state, which come out of this block grant. So it's interesting. I haven't had a lot of time to review it, but I personally like Dr. Tom Price's plan, where he says that we won't be continuing the subsidies, but what he will do, and what he hopes would happen to pass in a bill, is that there would be age-based tax refundable credits for those people in the states that lost their subsidy through this ruling.
Age-based, you haven't heard that mentioned very often, so I certainly agree with that plan as well. Sally, unfortunately, we're a little low on time tonight, so we appreciate you coming on and certainly lending your expertise. And as we learn more, we certainly want to have you back on again. So Sally Pipes, president of the Pacific Research Institute, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wilco, your thoughts on Republicans extending it 2 years even if the Supreme Court rules against?
Too many of the Republicans do not have I don't want to be insulting here. They just don't seem to be able to make the case. Here you have a party that wrote this bill all by itself with no help or intervention from the Republicans. If their intent was to extend these subsidies to every single person in every state, then why did they not put that in the bill? And you can't say it's a glitch or it's an oversight. This is one of the most important functions of the bill. If they screwed that up, I don't trust them to run a lemonade stand.
Heather?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're correct, and I think that's why the Supreme Court is. I'm leaning towards thinking that they are going to say that the law is illegal, but then what? I do think that Republicans have to come up with something. I heard today that they're talking about doing grants to the states, which would be interesting. I don't know that that gets by the president, though. And then, you know, we've talked about this before, how the president keeps saying, well, the Republicans need to do something about this, ha, 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 and yet he's going to have some input in that as well. And they're going to have to come together so that we don't leave all of these people hanging without insurance.
It's going to be on the Republicans. It's just inevitable, and they know it. But I got to tell you something. This is one of the rare times that I get to agree with Andrew. But he's right, and this is something you've heard me say before. Everybody's trying to cast this case as if it was an error. I'm not convinced it was an error. I think that the interpretation is that by making the subsidies attached to whether it's a state-operated exchange, the government thought, or the Democrats thought, they were going to force these states where they had Republican governors.
Games then, though. Then they're playing games with people's health care. If you're so worried about it, you don't play political games with this. If you're genuinely trying to improve the system, they are playing games. Because if they wanted to do that, they would have put it in that every resident or citizen would have got this. But they carved it up between states with exchanges and the federal exchange.
No, I'm agreeing with that, but I don't think it's fair to say, I mean, it's not unusual to have legislation where you're motivating states to do a certain thing. So that's not playing games. The game comes in the lawsuit. If they're defending based on the idea, oh, it was just a mistake, and it wasn't a mistake, that you could argue is playing games, but not in the original legislation. But, you know, we don't really know what their intent was.
And that'll have to be the last word. 5 seconds.
Such poorly worded legislation all around. It's a horrible act. Horrible.
I say get shot down. I think Justice Roberts wants a do-over, and he's going to get it. Anyway, teen gets 25 years as a registered sex offender and banned from the internet. What did he do? Stay tuned. And welcome back to The Wrap. Well, Newsmax wants to send one lucky couple on a 7-day Silver Sea cruise to the Caribbean this winter. Heather would enter so she could finally consummate that relationship, but no, she is not eligible. Cruise ships are nice. My sister got engaged on a cruise. Anyway, obviously, a luxury cruise aboard the Silver Wind is the trip of a lifetime. To win, however, you need to enter our sweepstakes. Visit newsmax.com/sweepstakes to enter. That's newsmax.com/sweepstakes. Okay, well, there are calls for justice after a 19-year-old Indiana student was thrown into jail and made to register as a sex offender for 25 years for having what both parties say was consensual sex with a 14-year-old. They met through a dating app, and the girl claimed she was 17. Parents of both teens asked the judge for leniency.
We told him to drop the case, and he wouldn't do it.
The current sentence greatly ruined and altered his life. I think the shirt says it simple, give his life back, because it's not just, it's for Zach, we want him to be able to be a normal 19-year-old.
And for the next 5 years, Zach is also banned from living in a home with internet access. That might be worse than jail. Meantime, in Delaware, a former cheerleader with the Baltimore Ravens is facing up to 15 years in prison after pleading guilty to a rape charge involving a 15-year-old boy. 48-year-old Molly Shattuck admitted she gave alcohol to the boy and then had a sexual encounter with him. She must also register as a sex offender and undergo a mental evaluation. Do the punishments fit the crimes in both cases, Ms. Hansen?
Definitely not on the first one. I mean, it's absolutely, and you know, you make light of the 5 years of no internet, but this kid's going to need to get a job, you know? In these days, the only way that you can do almost anything as far as professionally is through the internet. So it is going to have a huge impact on his life.
And if he meets somebody else, if this girl dumps him, then how's he going to meet anybody else? You can't get to the Tinder without the internet.
But to that point, with all of the online dating, the ability to know someone's age that you're dating is almost impossible. You know, 20 states say that it doesn't matter, strict liability. If the person is under a certain age, then you are liable. 30 states, it may be right vice versa. The other states say that it does matter and that it is part of the defense to know the age of the other person. I think certainly, given the influx of online dating, it should be part of the defense.
Most normal 19-year-olds are not having relations with middle schoolers. If you can't spot a middle schooler, and I know that girls look older with makeup and hair and all these things, but I don't know, 14? You're 14. You're talking baby fat still.
Yeah,
I mean,
freshman in high school-ish, right?
Ish.
Freshman in high school, probably.
Right. So with
I think
enough
if we
makeup
got
and
a
everything.
picture of this young lady, you may change your mind.
Oh well.
You know what? Statutory rape is statutory
Exactly.
rape. However, the punishment was a bit over the top, given the I mean, look, the judge would be absolutely right in finding him guilty. He was guilty of a statutory offense.
Well, it was a plea. It was a plea. I mean, the reason that he might be able to get a deal now is because it was a plea that went down poorly, and now they're going to appeal and try and get out of the plea.
Well, yeah.
But
I mean, because the judge didn't use his head.
No, and his statements were simply that you had sex and you shouldn't have, and this is your punishment. And it's a lot more nuanced than that. And judges need to be better with the nuances.
Yeah.
But as far as the Ravens cheerleader, you're in complete agreement with that particular punishment?
Listen, yeah, absolutely. She knew how young he was. She gave him alcohol, which is also against the law.
Yeah,
and
that was the kicker.
You know, there's a whole lot there that's very different from the other case as far as what she knew and what she did. I think that she clearly needs psychological evaluation. And I'm glad that she got a harsh punishment. A lot of times we see women get away with something more than men do.
It's one of the bigger age differences I've ever seen. She's 48 and the kid was 15. I mean, that's above cougar, right? Like, what's above cougar at this point? Is that lion?
know.
Is that,
It's a
I don't
goat.
even, yes.
You know, it's funny that
Something
when
like
we
that.
have female to male student interactions, it doesn't resonate as much because most men will react. Where was that when I was in high school? Except think about what an awful lesson that is for a 15-year-old boy, 16-year-old boy. His first experience with a woman is something that's not based in love or dating or anything that can. And but I don't mean to be the fuddy-duddy here. College, spring break, we know all those things go on, but still, when you're at that age, you're not mature enough to make those decisions.
Particularly when you're under the influence of alcohol, right?
Probably for the first time there. At 15, that may be his first time drinking.
But that is the elephant in the room. You know, when it's guys who are taken advantage of.
We're sickened by it.
Well, we're not. What? We're not sickened. No, we brag about it to our friends if that happens to you.
No, I'm talking about the adult. If a male teacher, 48 years old
that
or
sickens
45
us. Exactly
years old,
right. That sickens us. But
Denny
when
Hastert,
when it's reversed,
sickening.
Then it's like you go, hey, and that's not very good.
I think that's happening less and less, though.
I hope so.
I think people
It
are
should
starting
be
to see,
happening less
because the
and less.
effects that it's going to have on the young men who are going through this for the first time is going to impact their lives forever.
Oh,
And
yeah.
other women, it's a mess.
I'm willing to bet the
teach
boy.
boys how to be men. It's
Yeah.
hard enough to teach a boy how to be a man.
Yeah, my wife's pregnant with a boy. I can't
Mine
wait
too.
to have that conversation. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, when'd she do?
October.
Wow, October what?
You guys are.
I don't know the actual. I don't buy into that. It's going to happen when it happens.
Okay. See, we got a scheduled C-section. I got right down to the day. I got the time. It's like making a dental appointment.
There's an app for that.
9:45. There is an app probably for that. I already have it in Siri. Baby coming. Okay, great. I guess it's happening today. So good stuff. I'm glad we could get to know each other on this level. It's good stuff. Anyway, coming up next, Rick and I will sit down with the authors of the great new book, End of Discussion. Guy Benson, Mary Catherine Ham. They're next. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Well, is free speech under attack? Is true, meaningful dialogue dead? That's the question, or questions, a refreshing and timely new book by Guy Benson and Mary Catherine Ham are asking, called End of Discussion: How the Left's Outraged Industry Shuts Down Debate, Manipulates Voters, and Makes America Less Free and Fun. The authors are here with us now. Guy is the political editor of townhall.com. He's a radio host and a Fox News contributor. Mary Catherine is editor-in-large of hotair.com and also a Fox News contributor. And both were born after 1980, which really makes me feel like a geriatric.
How do you think I feel?
Yeah, I did not like looking that up and seeing that. Anyway, first question, just out of curiosity. Does Fox have a mandate in your contracts that says that you have to have a book out before 2015? Because we've had Powers here, Kimberly,
like 10 years.
Dana, who else am I missing? Gretchen. O'Reilly has 7 books coming out before Labor Day.
Obviously.
It's a great platform, obviously, to promote, but what made you want to write this book? And it's a very general question, so let me narrow it down a little bit. We talked about in the open meaningful and more meaningful and more genuine dialogue. Right. And it seems, and I used to be a producer first, and now I'm a media critic on top of doing this. And I know that the people that get booked normally on most cable shows speak at the extremes, or they're the loudest voices in the room, and they kind of drown out actual pragmatic discussion. So do you think that what you're trying to accomplish with this book is to actually have people talk on somewhat of an intelligent level to solve problems? Do you think that can exist in such a polarized medium today?
Yeah, I think it can. I think Guy and I and our careers are proof that not everybody is on the way extremes and or communicating in a bombastic fashion all the time. We have a different style, and yet we have a home on cable news, and so that's good. We also, as we were coming up as political commentators, noticed more and more how various types of conversations felt scarier and more off limits, and that's what we talk about in the discussion is, hey, how many barriers are we going to set up about free speech? How often are we going to be offended by every little thing that everyone says, instead of just dealing with the fact that, like, we all disagree sometimes. Doesn't mean people are evil, and we can actually have a discussion about it.
So I couldn't help but notice, and I agree with everything you just said, and I agree with your premise of your book, and I think you know what I'm about to say, though. You lay it all at the feet of the left.
We don't.
Well,
a lot of it.
Cover says what? No, you do. You lay most of it at the feet of the left.
Yes, absolutely.
And that troubled me a bit. It won't surprise you. I mean, it's certainly the left does that, or elements of the left do that. But then so do elements of the right. And if you don't believe that, just look at my Twitter feed. So that did trouble me. I mean, you're absolutely right. There's not enough dialogue. People get too angry, and it's very silly. Your style is, as you described it. I think you know that mine's very similar. So why lay it on the left? Why not everybody?
Because they deserve it. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, no, we do, and we know that you've read the book cover to cover, Rich. So you're aware that
Actually, you know what? I listened to an interview, somewhat obscure. I don't even know who it was, but I spent the morning listening to an interview you guys had done, and you got into it a bit.
Yeah, and we do absolutely call out our own side in End of Discussion. We even do an outrage confessional where I give an example of a time that I contributed to sort of the outrage culture and sort of did a mea culpa on that. So it's not exclusively the province of the left at all.
But it's easier to sell the book if you say it's the left.
No, it is.
No, it's actually a real problem.
It is actually a real problem that is mostly residing on the left, and it's not just the two of us who believe that. We interview and talk to a lot of people on the left and quote a lot of people on the left who are looking around and saying, you know what, this is mostly a problem that we're having. And whether it's Kirsten, whether it's Juan Williams, whether it's Jonathan Chait writing in New York Magazine, the anonymous professor who wrote at Vox about how she's scared of her liberal students, the list sort of goes. Don Lemon of CNN had a really good rant on this the other day. And I think the reason that there's this disparity in sort of the outrage wars is because clearly the right has its own outrage merchants. But those people, I think, are more easily pigeonholed and shunted off to the side as cranks and haters, and they aren't given much credibility. Whereas some of our culture's biggest and most influential institutions, much of the media, the entertainment industry, the academy, these are areas dominated by the left, and therefore the outrage machine on the left side of the spectrum gets more oxygen and more amplification, is therefore more effective.
They have the bigger megaphone.
And so many of these terms and tools, triggering, mansplaining, privilege, whatever the term of the day is to shut up whoever should not be talking according to the left, they are born on college campuses, which no one can argue is a bastion of right-wing thinking. And so that's where a lot of this is born, and then it's weaponized elsewhere by activists in Washington, D.C.
I take the point, but again, you're right. Hollywood tends to be dominated by liberal thinkers, no question. But then again, talk radio is very much dominated by right-wing thinkers, and nobody is pigeonholing them or putting them in a corner. So, and you look at the impact that they have on shutting down debate. I'll buy your premise on Hollywood, but you've got to buy the premise on talk radio.
We only have 10 seconds, but we can contribute this after the
he's
break.
got an answer.
Oh, of course he does.
If we didn't think this was a problem on the right as well, we probably wouldn't have written the book, because this is a societal problem that we tackle in End of Discussion. We absolutely believe, and many agree with us, that it's more of an issue on
Now, while we're talking about the issues, where do you stand on immigration?
Well, Jimmy, we're a nation of immigrants, and I believe everyone should have the chance to achieve the American dream. And to translate that for all your Spanish-speaking viewers, somos una nación de inmigrantes, y creo que todo el mundo debería tener la oportunidad de alcanzar el sueño americano.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold the telephono. I know you just got back from Miami, but I think I was interviewing Governor Pitbull.
Fireball.
Well done. Welcome back to Daily Wrap. We're still here with Guy Benson and Mary Catherine Ham. They are authors of the new book, End of Discussion, How the Left's Outrage Machine, and right to a certain extent, as we discussed last break, shuts down debate, manipulates voters, and makes America less free and fun. Okay, so we're talking about this during the break a little bit. We're going to go dive into politics. Do you think that a GOP candidate can win a general election being pro-life, okay, for starters, and being anti-gay marriage?
Yes.
Pro-life for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
At the same time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think it matters how you talk about issues. I think that when you get into social issues, and we actually address this in End of Discussion, we think this is a fallacy of American punditry, that gay marriage and abortion come as a package deal on the social issues. They don't. And if you look at polling, they are moving in opposite directions. There's a massive spike in support for gay marriage, and the pro-life position has been trending, especially among younger voters. Millennials are the most pro-life generation aside from senior citizens. More pro-life than boomers, more pro-life than Gen Xers. And so I think it's a mistake when we lump those two together, but especially on the gay marriage question, this is a really tough issue for the Republican Party moving forward, because the base and older voters hew to the traditional view of marriage, and we respect that opinion. We don't think that's all based out of bigotry. But I think being against gay marriage is a significant barrier to entry to the party for a lot of young people, and bridging that gap is not an easy task.
Well, here's the thing, in talking about either of those issues, regardless of what the position is for a Republican candidate, you have to understand what the barrier to entry is, that people are going to be listening for sort of code words, and that the outrage mobs, the End of Discussion, is looking to come after you. So the one thing we talk about over and over again is you have to address these things smartly. Think about how you're addressing them, and sometimes it feels like they don't before they talk about them.
I think the answer is yes. I agree with what you guys are saying, but I think the answer is yes, because I don't think people end up voting for president on those social issues. They may care about them, they may agree or disagree with that candidate, but that's not why they vote.
It's a wallet issue, you think?
Very few.
There are some.
It's an issue in terms of wallet.
They vote their wallets, and maybe in
Also
2016. Well, yeah, you're so right. It is. I always say it. Running for president's like running for senior class president in high school. You're absolutely right. If they like Jeb Bush, then they like Jeb Bush. They may not like everything he thinks, but they like him.
And I think that's what it came down to in 2012. I think ultimately that Mitt Romney couldn't sell the fact that he cared about people. Whether that was fair or unfair, I thought it was unfair. But the gecko caricature certainly resonated, and in the end you saw the exit polls, something like 80% said President Obama can relate to me more. Even though he doesn't have the ability to solve the problem, yeah, I like him better and I'm more comfortable.
He cares about me.
Right.
And by the way, in response to your question, can a Republican who's pro-life and pro-traditional marriage win nationally? I would direct you, and obviously he's got some problems at home now, but look at Chris Christie in New Jersey, his re-election. This is a pro-life, anti-gay marriage Republican in a very blue state who won 60% of the vote in 2013. Right. Of course someone like that can win nationally.
And whenever we talk about the GOP's brand problem, and there certainly is one, you also have to remember that the shortcut to getting new voters is being likable. That is the number one thing. It will let you be heard, and that's where you have to get.
So with all these candidates, right? We're probably going to have 16, maybe 18.
I think it's 47.
47. There's that number again. 47.
I got a bet on 22 finally.
22.
There are going to be 16 hours of debates.
break it down for me just real quick. Is there just really 3 real contenders, and the rest are just there maybe to run for vice president? And who are those top 3 contenders in your mind right now? Guy, you first.
Look, we're going to be covering this race and all these candidates, so I don't want to pigeonhole anyone yet because we haven't seen them debate. We haven't seen them really performing except in a handful of these early swing states.
True.
People aren't in this race yet, and people can sort of distance themselves from the pack and really emerge. A guy like John Kasich, who might run, might not run, governor of Ohio, won.
He is running.
I mean, he won a massive victory in the most important swing states, 64%, something like that. He gets in, he's potentially a game changer. Scott Walker isn't in yet. Jeb Bush has $100 million. Rubio, I mean, there's a lot of very interesting, intriguing people.
Yep, 515 days to go, 10 seconds.
Rubio, Walker, I think, are sitting on top of the pile. Jeb Bush obviously has a lot of money, but has a lot of convincing to do. And I love seeing a little different style from Carly Fiorina. She's been a lot of fun on the trail.
Absolutely. As far as a vice presidential race, yeah, she's positioned herself well in that regard. It's just one man's opinion. Anyway, thank you for bringing up Kasich, by the way. said that I'd like him to be our next president. I don't hide it. Anyway, this is the book, everybody. Please do buy it. End of discussion. This is the end of this discussion. Yay or nay is next. Back in a moment. It's happy time, people. Welcome back to Daily Wrap. It's time for Yay or Nay. And by the way, thanks again. We ran out of time there quickly to Mary Catherine Ham and Guy Benson for joining us tonight. Good stuff. Anyway, first up, the president is getting ready to sign off on a series of executive orders that will help make his global warming agenda more transparent. The new Clean Energy Impact Investment Center, that's bulky, at the Energy Department will make information about the department's green programs more readily available to the public. Transparency is great, but are more executive orders the way to go about this, yay or nay, Ms. Hansen?
No. I mean, I'm tired of executive orders. I'm tired of promises of transparency that we saw last night and we see every day that just don't happen. I don't think that any of it is necessary.
Rick?
Well, the answer to the question is clearly yes, because executive order is how you do that. You may not think it's necessary to do it, or you may not want to see the information, but for those who do, that's how it would be done.
An executive order to waste more money on green energy? Good. We didn't lose $90 billion on Solyndra and A123. We're going to pour some more money in, this time without congressional authority.
Okay. Last word on that, and a definitive one for that matter. Okay. Former NAACP President Rachel Dolezal may be out of a job, but not for very long. The transracial, or whatever she is, 37-year-old, she's only 37, really, boy, I didn't see that coming, is currently fielding offers for her own reality show. This according to Radar. I think we could all agree this is not a good idea, but, Rick Unger, Mr. Hollywood, would you watch the show, yay or nay?
I don't watch any of them. So, nay.
Okay, moving on.
No, I think we're starting to take advantage of someone who doesn't really have it together and is starting to look a little bit nasty. I would not watch.
Hiring an agent, hiring a management team, would you watch the show?
She's the William Hung of the civil rights movement. I don't think anybody's going to take her seriously. They'll watch one episode and it'll be canceled.
That'll be that.
Well done. And the reason why, not that the story isn't completely screwed up to the point where you want to see the train wreck. She just doesn't carry herself very well on television, in interviews or anything, right? She's known for being a liar, and that's basically the extent of her resume. So, yeah, it's not going to happen with the Concha household. Anyway, in a head-to-head comparison of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, the differences are obvious. But there's one difference I'm sure none of you would ever think of: the validity of their Twitter followers. Apparently, Mrs. Clinton has the highest percentage of fake Twitter followers, with a total of 35%. This according to an analysis of 12 presidential candidates conducted by Voactive and Twitter Audit, whoever they are. So, who has the lowest number of fake followers? You guessed it, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, who are tied for first place, and that'll be the last time that happens, with 10%. And Jeb Bush, who's in a very close second spot with 11. Would you buy Twitter followers to make yourself appear to be more popular, Mr. Serious?
No, because people know you're doing it. It's not a trick if everybody knows you're doing it. If we know there are bot followers, and a bunch of websites have shown pictures of these factories in China with looks like bingo boards of people sitting there with all these used iPhones. If you know people are doing it, it's just cheap.
Agreed. Heather?
You wake up in the morning and you have 30,000 more than when you went to bed the night before.
Somebody may notice.
It's just not, it doesn't make sense.
You have 5 million Twitter followers.
Yeah.
Are they all
Not
real?
one of them was paid for. I'm too cheap.
Okay, see? Well, there you go. I didn't think
And
he was going to
I
end
don't
that
have
sentence
5
that way.
million.
Okay. 50 million. Finally tonight, a friend of escaped prisoner Richard Matt is showing us a different side to one of the most wanted men in America, his artistic side. John Mulligan met Matt in prison. As you can see in the video, Matt has quite a collection of paintings by Matt, mostly of celebrities like Oprah, Marilyn Monroe, Julia Roberts, Hillary Clinton, and Martin Luther King Jr. In that video, the president says Matt's artwork represents a waste of talent and what his life could have been had he taken a different path. As you may have heard, Matt and fellow inmate David Sweat escaped last week from a maximum security prison in upper New York State, like Shawshank. Would you ever buy one of his pieces, Rick? Yeah or nay? You collect art.
Well, not that kind. I mean, what do I need a picture of any of those people for? I mean, no.
Okay, one of the more famous prison breaks of all times.
No, the picture's a little creepy. If you're Julia Roberts, I'd be a little bit nervous. I don't want that on my wall.
That's true. Last word.
No. I realize these guys have a lot of time on their hands, but no.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, panel, for this rather unique show that we had this evening. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming on for the first time as well. We hope to have you back.
I will come back.
Okay, absolutely. Get the invitation together, the written invitation this time. None of that email stuff.
calligraphy.
Okay, very good. And Heather, your teeth look amazing as
Oh,
usual.
thank you.
All right, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Joe Concha, Newsmax Prime. JD Hayworth, that's next.